It started as just another regular Thursday. I was sitting on the couch after work, my feet aching from a long day. The house was quiet, too quiet, honestly. My wife, Lisa, usually calls me during her lunch break, but today I got nothing, not even a text. That wasn't unusual, but an uneasy feeling crept in. I shrugged it off. Maybe she was busy. Maybe she was running late. Later that evening, I decided to check her phone. I don't normally do that, but something felt off. Her messages were mostly innocuous coworker banter, some gossip. But then I saw the text, a photo of her smiling in front of a hotel mirror with a caption, "Can't wait for tonight." My stomach clenched. My heart started pounding. I stared at the screen like it was a foreign object. That's when I realized she lied about staying late at work. Next, I remembered her phone password. I hesitated, then unlocked it. I needed to see everything. The chat history was full of flirtatious messages, suggestive emojis, and plans to meet after hours. It wasn't just a one-time thing. I scrolled back and found a dozen messages, each one more brutal than the last. She was sneaking around, lying to my face. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept circling around her betrayal. I had trusted her for years. We'd been married for 5, together for 8. I never thought Lisa, my wife, the woman I shared everything with, would do something so cold. I could feel my fists clenching. My palms were slick with sweat. It was like a storm had built inside me, and I couldn't find a way to calm it down. The next morning, I decided I needed proof. I called the security company that monitored our building. I had a gut feeling she'd been sneaking out late. When I asked about the security footage, I was told there was nothing unusual at first. But then I pressed harder. They reviewed the cameras from the night before. The images flickered on my phone screen like a punch to the gut. There she was, Lisa, slipping out of our apartment building at 10:30 p.m., hurriedly walking down the street. But it got worse. The footage from the hotel she was supposedly working late at. It showed her entering a room number 402, around 11 p.m. alone. And later she left the hotel just after midnight. No work-related reasons for that. Just her with her hair a mess, face flushed, acting like she was trying to hide something. My skin crawled. My stomach twisted into knots. For years, I'd been the one working late nights, sacrificing weekends for her. And here she was, lying, sneaking around, betraying everything we had. I remember gripping my phone so tightly that my knuckles turned white. I looked at the screen and knew I couldn't just confront her and hope for the best. She lied from the start. I needed a plan. I sat back, my head pounding. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. How many times had I missed the signs? Little things, her sudden phone secrecy, her disappearing acts, her evasiveness when I asked about her whereabouts. It all made sense now. I'd been looking for an excuse to ignore my gut, but the truth was staring me right in the face. Right then, I decided I'd take control of the situation. Not react out of rage. No, I needed a plan that would hit her where it hurt without throwing the first punch. I wanted her to realize what she'd done. I wanted her to feel the loss, the betrayal, and I knew exactly how to do it step by step. I closed my eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath, trying to steady myself. But as I sat there, the anger simmered, and I knew this wasn't going to end quietly. She crossed a line that I couldn't ignore anymore. This wasn't just about discovering the truth. It was about making her see what her lies had cost. And I was ready. I looked at her phone again, then back at the footage. My hands trembled slightly. I could see the wheels turning. The revenge I had in mind wasn't impulsive. It would be calculated, precise. Because if she thought she'd get away with this, she had another thing coming. All I needed now was to finalize my plan. I wanted her to wake up and realize I wasn't the fool she thought I was. No, I'd show her that she'd broken more than just my trust. She'd broken everything, and I was going to make her pay. In the days that followed, I couldn't focus on anything else. Every time I tried to pretend normal, the images played in my head on repeat, her leaving the hotel, her face flushed and hurried. I'd wake up in the middle of the night with a knot in my stomach, my fists clenched so tightly my nails pressed into my palms. It was like I'd been hit with a sledgehammer, except the pain was mental, burning deep inside my chest. I started looking into her phone, her emails, her social media accounts. I was cautious, didn't want her to suspect anything, but I needed to know just how deep the rabbit hole went. What I found confirmed my suspicions. She was actively texting with her boss, a guy named Mark, trying to keep their affair quiet. They'd planned everything in coded messages, hidden behind innocent words. One night I sat in the dark, clutching her phone, scrolling through their conversations. I read things I never wanted to see: flirtatious exchanges, promises to meet, plans to keep their secret. They'd even talked about how no one would suspect a thing, how she'd cover her tracks. I felt my jaw tighten. My stomach twisted again, but this time with a cold fury I hadn't allowed myself to feel before. That's when I decided I needed to go beyond just collecting evidence. I needed to send a message, a clear, unmistakable one. I wanted her to realize that betraying me would come with a price. I started mapping out my revenge, not some petty act but something that would make her understand how badly she'd screwed up. I knew her habits well enough now. She was meticulous. She liked to keep things neat, organized. So I figured I'd use her own methods against her. First, I bought a small GPS tracker, discreet enough to hide in her purse or on her. I attached it to her bag when she left for work one day. My plan was to follow her, see exactly where she went, how she operated behind my back. I wanted her to see that I was always watching, but that wasn't enough. I needed something more tangible, something she'd notice. So I went to a local print shop and made high-quality copies of some of her most suggestive messages with Mark, along with the hotel footage of her sneaking out. I made paper copies of everything that would strike her like a fist to the gut. I kept a copy for myself, of course, something to remind me I was in control now. I also decided to leave her a personal gift at her office. Nothing violent, just a simple yet cruel gesture, a note on her desk reading, "I know everything, enjoy your secret while you can. Your husband." I bought a nice, thick envelope, sealed it tight, and slipped it into her bag. When she found it, I wanted her to realize I'd been watching, waiting for the right moment, that I'd caught her red-handed, and I was ready to make her regret this. The day I executed the plan, my heart pounded like a drum. I was nervous but also strangely calm. I'd spent so much time building up to this moment that I knew I couldn't back down now. I parked just outside her office building, watched her get out of her car, and saw her walk in, oblivious to what was waiting for her. I followed her inside, keeping my distance. When she discovered the note, I saw the shock flash across her face. Her eyes widened, her cheeks turned pale, and she read the words over and over. I knew she'd be stunned. She'd thought I didn't know, or maybe that I was too weak to do anything about it, but I'd shown her differently. I'd shown her that I was willing to go to great lengths to reclaim my dignity and my life. That evening I sat back and watched her reaction. She called Mark, her voice trembling. I could hear her whisper, "You've got some explaining to do." She looked shaken, confused, and maybe a little scared. I knew I'd crossed a line, but I didn't care anymore. I'd made her feel what it was like to be vulnerable, caught in her own web of lies. Fallout was immediate. She tried to deny everything, but the evidence was too overwhelming. She was defensive, angry, and crying. But I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. I wanted her to realize she'd lost her marriage, her trust, and maybe even her respect. In the end, I walked away from that confrontation with a sense of relief. I'd taken back control, and I'd made her feel the pain of betrayal. I'd proved to her, no matter how much she lied or tried to hide, that secrets always come out. And when they do, there's no going back. The following days were a blur of cold silence and tense stares. She avoided me at first, acting like I was invisible. I could see her trembling whenever she thought I wasn't looking, and it fed the fire inside me. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and anger, like I'd finally taken control, but at the cost of my own dignity. Still, there was no going back now. I kept watch from a distance, monitoring her calls and movements, waiting for the moment I believed would hit her hardest. I wanted her to understand that I was serious. This wasn't just about catching her in a lie, it was about making her face the consequences of her betrayal. One afternoon, I saw her leave work early. She looked nervous, like she was on edge. I followed her to a small, upscale hotel downtown. I parked across the street and watched her slip inside. No longer concerned about privacy, I used my phone to record her entering the room, number 402. I saw her hesitate for a moment, then push the door open. She was caught in her own web now, and I was determined to tighten the threads. I needed to act fast. I'd already decided that her phone and her belongings would become part of my game. I broke into her purse that night just enough to grab her phone. I didn't want to destroy anything, just enough to see what she'd been hiding. Her messages with Mark, her secret plans, everything was there. I spent hours sifting through her texts, her photos, her recent calls. Every piece of evidence was another brick in my wall of revenge. I also managed to install a small recording device in her car, just to catch her conversations if she ever thought she was alone. That way, I'd have even more proof of her lies, her deceit. It was a sick feeling, but I told myself it was necessary. I needed her to feel vulnerable, cornered, like she'd made me. One night, I set up the perfect moment. I left her a package on our doorstep, a simple, plain box with her name on it. Inside, I put a few objects that I knew would unsettle her: a piece of clothing from her hotel stay, a receipt from the hotel restaurant, and a note. The note was typed, cold and precise. "You thought you could get away. Now you know I'm always watching. No more secrets." The message was clear. She'd been caught, and I wanted her to realize she'd gone too far. The next day, she exploded. She called me furious, trying to deny everything. I played her recordings over the phone, making her hear her own voice, her lies. "You think you can hide from me? I've seen it all," I told her, voice low and steady. "Your secret life is over." She screamed, crying, begging me to believe her, but I'd heard enough. I told her to leave the house and not come back until she'd sorted herself out. I couldn't stand the sight of her, not after what she'd done. The betrayal ran too deep. I watched her drive off in tears, her face twisted in shame and anger. I felt a rush of cold satisfaction. She'd been so confident, so sure she could hide her infidelity, but I'd shown her differently. I'd taken control of her secrets, her lies, and her life. It was a calculated game, and I'd played it perfectly. I knew I'd made her realize she'd lost everything: her marriage, her trust, her peace. But I also knew I had to be careful, not to let her see how much I'd been planning. That's why I kept everything under wraps. I didn't want her to suspect that I was just getting started. The real revenge was still coming, and she didn't see it coming. I sat back, feeling the cold relief settle over me. I'd taken my power back, and I wasn't going to let her forget it. Her lies had sealed her fate, and now I was about to make sure she paid in a way she'd never forget. The best part: it was only just beginning. Over the next few days, I stayed quiet, letting her squirm in her own mess. She started avoiding me altogether, which was exactly what I wanted. The house felt colder, emptier, like a ghost town. Every step she took, every breath she drew, I was watching. I could almost taste the fear, thick and bitter, rising in her throat. Meanwhile, I was refining my plan. I didn't want just to catch her. No, I wanted her to suffer, to realize what her betrayal cost her. I needed to make her feel the loss in a way that hit deep. I kept thinking about how to do it slowly, painfully, without exposing myself too early. One evening, after I'd done my reconnaissance, I made a call to a private investigator. I explained what I wanted: someone discreet who could help me gather more concrete proof, especially of her meetings with Mark. I needed footage, recordings, anything that would crush her entirely. I needed her to see that I was serious, that I'd gone beyond the boundaries she set. The pie was cautious but confident. "I'll get you what you need. Give me a couple of days," he said. I nodded, feeling a strange sense of calm settle over me. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity, about making her understand she'd lost her grip on everything. While waiting, I kept tabs on her, following her when she left the house, watching her interact with colleagues. I noticed her body language, tensing up when she thought I wasn't looking, hurried movements, eyes darting around, all signs of a guilty conscience. I kept my distance, but I was always there, lurking just out of sight. Finally, the investigator came through. He sent me grainy footage: her entering a hotel, meeting with Mark, sharing a brief kiss. The video was enough to give me a clear picture. I printed out the most damaging images: her face flushed, her lips pressed close to his neck, her leaving the hotel with an air of relief. That night, I prepared a final gift. I bought a small black box lined with foam. Inside, I placed the photos, meticulously printed and cut to look as vivid as possible. I wrapped it in plain paper and wrote a message: "This is just the beginning. You betrayed me, but I'm not done yet." I left the package on her desk at work early the next morning before she arrived. I watched from a distance, hidden behind a corner as she found it. Her eyes widened when she saw the photos. Her breath caught and her face drained of color. She looked around, then grabbed her phone to call me, but I didn't answer. Instead, I stayed hidden, letting her process what she'd just seen. When she finally managed to get to her car, I saw her trembling hands on the steering wheel. Her face was a mix of shame and panic. She knew I had her. I'd shown her I wasn't going to let this slide anymore. This moment was crucial. I wanted her to realize that every lie, every sneaking moment had consequences, that I was capable of revealing everything. It was her turn to feel exposed, vulnerable, just like I'd felt when I uncovered her secrets. I didn't need to say a word anymore. Her reaction said it all. As I watched her drive away, I felt a strange sense of both satisfaction and emptiness. I'd set things in motion, and I knew this was the point of no return. She could try to deny it, hide, or run, but I had all the proof I needed now. I was ready for whatever came next because this game of hers was over, and deep down I knew I'd won. The only question was, what would she do when she realized I was serious about ending this? A few days after I left the photos on her desk, I could see the cracks widening. She was on edge, snapping at, avoiding eye contact. The guilt was eating her alive, and that's exactly what I wanted. I kept my distance, but I made sure she knew I was still watching. I wanted her to feel the weight of her betrayal pressing down on her, crushing her from the inside out. One afternoon, I finally confronted her face to face. I was sitting in the living room, pretending to be engrossed in a book, but really I was just waiting for her to come home. When she stepped through the door, her eyes immediately darted around, searching for something, anything. Her hands trembled as she tried to hide her anxiety. She looked at me, her voice shaky. "What do you want from me?" I set the book down slowly, meeting her gaze. "I want to know if you understand what you've done. You lied to me for months, sneaking behind my back, betraying everything we had." I took a deep breath, letting the words hang in the air. "And I have evidence. The hotel footage, the messages. You think you can just brush this off?" Her face twisted with guilt, tears pooling in her eyes. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was confused. It was a mistake." I shook my head. "A mistake? No, Lisa. This was more than a mistake. This was betrayal, and I'm done pretending it didn't happen." I paused, then added coldly, "You're leaving. Pack your things and go. I want you out of this house by tonight." She stared at me, stunned. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," I replied, voice clipped. "You crossed the line, and I'm not going to stay and watch you burn what we built." She broke down then, sobbing uncontrollably. I felt nothing but a hollow ache. It was like I'd been holding my breath for too long, and now I finally allowed myself to exhale. I handed her a small bag of essentials, her face pale and trembling. "Take what you need, just go." As she packed her things, I didn't watch her. Instead, I went into the study where I had prepared everything, my final move. I recorded her crying, her trembling hands, everything. I wanted to remember how it felt to see her like this, guilty, broken, defeated. I knew she'd try to come back, try to fix it, but I wasn't interested anymore. Trust was shattered. Her lies had burned everything to the ground. When she finally left, I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. The house was quiet again, but the silence was deafening. I sat down on the couch, the weight of everything pressing into me. I realized I was both victorious and exhausted, but I also knew this wasn't the end. I'd made sure she understood she couldn't get away with it. The evidence was secure, the damage done. It was time to move forward, to rebuild whatever was left, or to let it all go. As I looked around the empty house, I thought about what I'd tell anyone who asked. That honesty and strength aren't about never falling, but about how you handle falling when it happens. And right now, I felt like I'd finally taken control of my life again, even if it was through a hell of a lot of pain. What I learned: sometimes the only way to find peace is to confront the chaos head-on, even if it means destroying everything to rebuild something stronger. In the days that followed, I felt the weight lift just a little. The house was silent, yes, but there was a strange clarity now. I'd gone from being a clueless husband to someone who finally took charge. I didn't celebrate or feel victorious in the usual sense. Truthfully, I felt hollow. Betrayal Cuts deep, and even the strongest revenge can't fully erase the ache inside. But at least I knew I had closed that chapter on my terms. I went to the courthouse the next morning. I filed for divorce, straightforward and swift. No lengthy negotiations, no drawn-out fights. I handed over the keys, the court papers, and told myself I'd rebuild from the ashes of what was supposed to be a life together. When I signed those papers, I felt a strange sense of finality. It wasn't just about ending the marriage, it was about reclaiming my dignity, about proving that I was stronger than her lies, her betrayal. As I handed over her belongings and officially cut ties, I looked her in the eye one last time. "You made your choice," I said quietly. "Now live with it." She looked at me, eyes filled with regret, but I didn't feel a shred of guilt. If anything, I felt relief, finally free from the lies, from the betrayal that had haunted me. Walking out of the courthouse, I carried a small bag with my essentials and a battered but clear mind. I was no longer the man I'd been. The man who trusted blindly, who believed in forever. That version of me was gone. But in its place, I found something more valuable, a chance to start over, to rebuild a life that wasn't built on lies. Reflecting on everything, I realize now that revenge, when done right, can be a form of healing. Not because I wanted her to suffer, but because I needed to reclaim my boundaries, my sanity. I needed her to see that trust isn't a game you can cheat on and expect to win. When she betrayed me, she thought she could hide behind her lies and manipulation. But I proved her wrong. I took control, I took my power back, and I made sure she understood that secrets always come out. To anyone in a similar situation, trust your gut. The signs are usually there, waiting to be ignored until it's too late. But once you see the truth, don't hesitate. Take control of your fate. Sometimes, the only way to move forward is to tear everything down and rebuild from the ground up. It's painful, yes, but it's necessary. Because in the end, the most important thing is respecting yourself enough to walk away when someone else refuses to do the same. So I closed that chapter of my life with a simple act, handing over the keys, signing the papers, and letting go of the past. Because no betrayal, no secret, no lie is worth losing yourself. And as I step into what's next, I know one thing for sure: I'm finally free.